Hello everyone and welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. I'm going to cut to the chase. Batch two. Don't do that. Batch 2. Maker's Mark, Whisky Shop, exclusive, single barrel, custom pick by yours truly. You can probably guess what the score is going to be. But before we go through all the scoring, let's talk about what it is. So for those of you who haven't seen the Batch 1 video, I think we recorded that in October or November of last year. I want to say October. Went down a storm. I'm pretty sure the bottle is now nearly fully sold out. I think there's like maybe 10 bottles left in the company. So thank you all for that. It was awesome. It was a big, robust, raucous kind of whiskey with loads of spice, and it kind of, super experience. You want batch 1 to be a real experience of a product. Batch 2, we've made it more elegant and we've made it more layered and more complex. And for something for real kind of bourbon aficionados and even just like regular whiskey aficionados, you can sit down and really examine this whiskey to many different degrees. But in terms of how we did it, we took Maker's Mark cash strength. We added 3 staves of seared French cuvee. We added 3 Maker's Mark 46 staves, 2 roasted French Mocha staves, and 2 French spice staves. And it's essentially a finishing process. We put the whiskey in a barrel. There's this ring inside the barrel with these 10 staves hanging on it, and they allow additional maturation to the whiskey. With batch 1, we used 5 French Mocha staves, which gave it this, that's 50% of the stave, and it gave it this huge, powerful, almost rye-like characteristic. This one is significantly more balanced, and I would go as far as to say, without being biased, that I genuinely think it's one of the most balanced whiskies you can buy for under £100 in terms of how it changes and how it develops. It's 54.95%. I'm assuming, we don't have official figures yet, but I think there's around about 250 to 260 bottles. That's what we got roughly the last one. But enough of that. Let's smell, let's taste, let's tell you what's going on. For people who don't drink bourbon, you're going to assume the notes I'm going to come out with now are just generic bourbon. And to a degree they are, it's butterscotch, and it's Werther's original like little candy sweets, and there's cinnamon rolls and like royal icing that you get on like iced fingers. There's a real sweetness to it, a real richness and a depth to it. If you let your nose wander a little bit too far down the glass, you will get that alcoholic kick. We are talking about a cask strength whiskey, so keep it up top. Like cocoa powder, nutmeg, mace. I've already said cinnamon, but I'll say it again because it's kind of in there. And it's not cinnamon spice, it's like actual cinnamon, that flavour and that feel of cinnamon. Coconut, caramel, vanilla, molasses, brown sugars, a bit of rum, even like kind of dark, well-aged rum. So sweet, to say the least, but sweet with spiciness in it. But now for the most important part, which is the taste. I guarantee you, and we'll put strong money on it, that if I gave you that blind and just said taste it, and if you ignored smell, which would be hard to do, but if you did ignore the smell, so that bourbon wasn't a leading note, this tastes initially like a sherried single malt. It hits the tip of your tongue with like this sherry sweetness. It's kind of tropical, but kind of Christmassy and marinated and dried and just fruity. It honestly reminds me of things like Glendronach 12, Aberlour Rare Cask, like the old bottles of Macallan 12 they used to get before sort of the new design in that kind of red maroon box. I would be convinced this was, and one of the gentlemen who picked it out with us isn't a bourbon fan, but when he tried it he went, it tastes like whiskey, which for him means scotch. And I would agree with him, it tastes like sherried single malt, but the longer you leave it in your palate, that's where things begin to get interesting and begin to dive down into this deeper layer of flavour that these 10 casks, these 10 staves are providing. It starts to get dry around the sides of your tongue. It's the barrel influence, that's that French Mocha, that's that French spice coming through. But the top of your tongue still stays sweet. You still get that wonderful kind of butterscotchy, caramelly, sherry thing going on. And then it all kind of collects at the back of your mouth and it all comes together and you just get this beautiful, big, toasty, slightly bitter spice. Which in my mind is reminiscent of some of the best whiskies that I've ever tried before. It's one of these contrasting products, like, oh, it just smells like bourbon. But then you try it and there's greater depth and there's greater power and there's so much more going on. And with number one, batch 001 being such an experienced whiskey, which is something I've always called it, this is, you know, that Southern Belle, that Kentucky Rose, that kind of, there's more going on beneath the surface than what you would assume. And I think this whiskey is a fantastic example of that. I'm going to try it one more time and I'm going to stop talking at you because, you know, you're here to hear me talk about whiskey rather than everything else. It is so mellow and so delicate on the flavour. And then only if you leave it lingering, and even after you've swallowed it, you get this almost backdraft of oak and really heavily burnt sugars and molasses and cinnamon, maces, and all those kind of like festive kind of cooking spices, which you would associate with things like Aberlour or Macallan or Glendronach. If you like Scotch whiskey and you want to get into bourbon, and you want something that's, you know, cash strength and boozy, this is the way to go. And we made it and we designed it that way for that reason, because it's different. It's a 10. I think you all knew that as soon as you probably saw the title. We gave batch 1 a 10. There was no way this wasn't going to be a 10. The delicacy, the balance, the overall flavour profile of the entire whiskey I think is outstanding. It was a privilege to be involved with picking that on the same day we chose batch number 1. I'm hoping for batch 3. Maker's Mark if you're watching. Batch 3. Let's get it all the way up to 007 if we can, because who's not a James Bond fan? It's a 10. Thank you all for watching. Comment below if you have any other questions about anything I've not mentioned. This is the Whisky Shop Manchester. I'm Phil, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you next week.